To the Pious Reflections podcast. I am your host, Daniel Roberts. Today we are going to be talking about Scott Presler and his influence on the GOP and the LGBT influence that has made its way into the GOP. We're also going to be talking about Charlie Kirk, and we're going to be talking about the new Catholic movies that are coming out that I want to get everybody's opinion on, as well as the tide that is turning and dividing men and women across conservative and liberal lines. And so I hope you enjoy this episode 2 of Pious Reflections. Sorry, it was a bad throw. Just threw we got a new timer over in the corner so that I don't go over. So today's goal is 30 minutes or less, guys. I'm going to make it happen, okay?
And if you don't, that timer was a total waste.
Yeah, it's true. How much was it? Was it expensive?
It was like $30.
Okay. Well, that's not that bad. I mean, I guess that's $1 a minute, you know? So anyway, well, welcome to the Pious Reflections podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Roberts. And we are going to be trying to do 100 episodes over the course of a daily podcast at night because I have a full-time job. So we're going to try to do a daily episode during the weekday. And the plan is that at 100 episodes, we're going to basically reevaluate. And I know I did this before with the Solomon's Corner stuff, but we kind of weren't really sure what we were doing. And I feel like we've got a good strategy this time around. And so that is what we're going to do. So to start things off, I'm going to again do what I did yesterday, and I'm going to jump into the funny tweets just to have a little bit of brevity and go from there. So today, to start things off, I want to find out from people, how do you pronounce DOGE? So those of you who don't know, Elon Musk started the Department of Government Efficiency, and there is now an official Twitter account for it, which is awesome. And I had a friend say that he called it Dogie, and I was like, or Doggy, and I was like, what are you talking about? It's Doge. And then I posted this online, and I got a couple different responses. And Doggy obviously has the gift there from Logan. And then John, who is going to be coming on the podcast later this week, said Doge. And then Doge. And I just want to find out from you. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this. But how do you pronounce it? Do you pronounce it Doge? Do you pronounce it Doogie? Do you pronounce it Dougie? What is your pronunciation? You let me know in the comments below. We're going to move on to other more important and pressing topics right now, which is going to be this story out of about basically the main theme of this show today is there still a place in the political space for the church, like the Christian church, with the traditional marriage views, the pro-life views, all of those views that are so important. And the reason why I bring this up is because there was a lot of buzz around, the idea of, well, wait, hold on. Before we dive into that, and this is a live broadcast, so, this is real deal. I want to make sure I don't forget to do these things. I want to show you guys, we're going to do this at the beginning of every show. I want to show you guys the analytics that we have for the last episode so that you guys can, track and see what's going on. Your sharing of this episode matters, all those kinds of things. And primarily, we're looking at the analytics from Substack. If you guys want to see the YouTube analytics, that's totally fine too, which are pretty dismal right at this point because we're only 2 episodes in. But here from yesterday, I was actually pretty pumped. We actually had a significant increase on the this episode from what we have usually posted. So appreciate all of you guys listening in. The traffic that we got was a lot of emails, obviously, but Substack, we got way more than we usually do from Substack, which was good. And then we also had this massive uptick, and this may have gone up more below is what we usually get, and in the 24 hours, and this is what we got in the first 24 hours today. So that is where we're at currently. We might get into more analytics later, but just so you guys know that, when you watch this stuff, it actually does make a difference, and when you share this stuff, it actually does make a difference. So currently, I'd say each share that we have, or repost, or sharing to whatever social media platform you have, it basically boosts us about 15 views. So and if somebody else shares it, then that's great. All right, back to Scott Presler and Charlie Kirk and the whole kind of where are things at currently, because what happened was that Trump basically formed his coalition, and one of those coalitions being the LGBT community that really had a problem with the transgender stuff and all these different things that were kind of forcing this ideology into public schools. They didn't like this idea. There was this whole conservative gay movement that didn't want this kind of being thrust upon people, and still believed in biological reality and all this kind of stuff. And then you have the Christians who were coming alongside Trump, who saw this as an attack on their religious freedom, and they wanted to be able to have this protection, this kind of they're coming for our kids kind of mentality, and which was true. And so the reality was that the Christians and the LGBT conservatives kind of found this common ground to unite around, and two very prominent individuals, Charlie Kirk and Scott Presler, did incredible ground games in order to help Trump win. Now, alongside that is also the fact that Christians, a lot of them just decided they weren't going to vote. And the reason why this is significant is because if you've seen that meme that Elon Musk has shared out, and a lot of Democrats, or former Democrats, I guess now, has shared out, is this line that is in fact, Lindsay, if you want to find it, maybe I can share it. But this line that basically has, the far left and the Democrats of the previous generation standing in the middle, and then the conservatives are with them, and the lefties are saying, "Why did you leave us?" And they point to them and they say, "No, I left you," or basically, "You left me." Well, I think what is possibly happening right now is a similar thing with Christianity. Imagine you have, your centrists right there. They used to be Democrats. Now they're identifying as the Republican Party. And you've got the left way over here. And I think what actually happened is that, and time will tell if this is actually the case, but the political interests of the LGBT and the Christian community are not the same. What happened was that both groups felt the censorship, felt the oppression, and the conservative, libertarian, or liberty-based political spectrum that they shared actually, brought them together, and I think temporarily, for this election. As the lefties kind of moved to the left, you had the centrists staying in the middle, and the LGBTs that came into the conservative LGBTs, we'll just call it that for lack of a better term, ended up pushing out a lot of Christians because Christians left. And so Christians felt the same way about the conservative party leaving them. The problem is there was no political party to go and find for them to go into. So if you look at the GOP, now I'm not saying Christians didn't vote for Trump. I know that they voted for Trump. But the reality is that the GOP is no longer representative of Christian values. It is way more pro-choice. Do you have it?
Yeah, I just sent it to you.
You want to text it to me?
Yeah, I already sent it to you on Signal.
Okay, cool. I'll pull it up real quick. And so this is that graph that I am trying to. Let me download this real quick. And actually, you know what? we'll do that there, and then I can pull this up in the. I guess I could just do the screen share. That should work. Okay, so you got this diagram here, right? This hopefully nobody messages me on Signal. We'll have to work on that. You've got this left, bigot, me, conservative, LOL, right? So at the top, you have my fellow liberal and me, and they're kind of close to the center, and then the conservatives are way over here. And then my fellow liberal runs, and me left in the center, and the conservatives are over here. And then you got the woke progressive at the bottom, bigot, and the center has moved, and now the me is more to the right. But this little guy over here is actually, I think, the church, or could be the church in the years to come, depending on what alliances are formed over the course of the coming years. And so one of the reasons why this is important is because we basically saw this unity come together around the LGBT Q community. And I'm going to change my screen back here. Just give me a minute. And we saw this LGBT community and this coalition forming around Christians and LGBTs for Trump, because they wanted to be able to have the freedom to do what they want and the freedom to practice the religion. And this basically formed a coalition. And the two key individuals here are Scott Presler and Charlie Kirk. For those that don't know Scott Presler, he is very much a gay man. Like, I tried to find videos where I was like, well, my listeners might feel like I'm making fun of him. No offense, Scott Presler, because I know you did a whole bunch of work. Like seriously, he probably is the reason Trump won Pennsylvania. So this is not like a dig or anything at him. But Scott Presler, according to this story here on, let me see here. It's called, what is this news site called? It's, I don't know, AS. Who is that? You know who that is, Lindsay?
Where?
The article that you sent me for this. It's like AS.
Oh, no, I don't actually
All
know
right. I have no idea who this is, but Greg Heilman wrote the article, and it's the story of Scott Presler, the activist who galvanized the Amish community's vote for Donald Trump in the U.S. election. And one of the things that he talks about here is he says, Pennsylvania, with its 19 electoral votes, was considered the swing state upon which the 24 election would hinge. In the end, Donald Trump looks set to sweep all of them in what was a decisive victory nationally. In his third try for the presidency, he managed to get a majority in the popular and electoral college vote for the first time. In the Keystone State, he garnered over 50% of the vote and surpassed Biden's 2020 winning margin, currently in excess of 130,000. Nietzscheans and Trump supporters are praising Scott Presler for swinging Pennsylvania back into the red through his get out the vote efforts in the state over the past few years, especially the Amish. And so we have this article here and this video where Scott Presler is celebrating his victory.
Hey everybody, this is Scott Presler. I'm back home seeing mom and dad in Fairfax County, Virginia. And gosh, it just feels so good. We did it. And now I'm gonna get myself back into the peak performance, not only physically, maybe also physically, but mentally. And so take some self-care, take some time off, do a victory lap, hug your kids, hug your mom and dad. But guys, we did it, and it feels so good.
Okay. So like I say, he's proud. We'll just say that. But anyway, so, at the end of the day, this guy did a ton to get out the vote and earned a lot of cred from the conservatives, including Christians, and rightly so, because he did the work. Not that I'm trying to say, Matt Walsh's DEI thing, but he did the work, And one of the things that I think is relevant here is that all these Christians who decided not to be involved in the political process this time around ultimately ended up conceding political power to the LGBT lobby within the conservative movement. And so the article continues, how this activist galvanized the Amish community's vote for Donald Trump in the U.S. election 2024. In 2021, Presler settled in Pennsylvania, where he has been working to get voters registered and encourage them to support Trump. He targeted labor unions, hunters, and specifically Amish communities. For this last group, he used the case of a local farmer whose dairy was raided by state authorities for selling raw milk unpasteurized without a permit as an example of government overreach. He also focused on the Republican Party's stance on religious and education freedom, along with deregulation of business. And so the reason why this is important is because you have an LGBT advocate advocating for religious freedom, which presumably is, I would assume, and I don't know Scott Presler's religious views, but I would imagine he might have a problem with Christians teaching that homosexuality is a sin. I would assume that. Maybe he might be for it politically or whatever, but there's no way that he agrees with the conservative Christian school down the road on religious ethics, because he's living a lifestyle counter to that. Now, he might believe that that school can teach what they want, et cetera, but where this comes into play is the public schools. How is this going to affect the public schools? And so on the flip side, you've got Charlie Kirk. And Charlie Kirk was absolutely crushing the campus get out the vote effort. Here's a video of him doing a conversation with a young man who was going to vote Democrat.
So I tend to lean liberal on a lot of issues, and I'm kind of torn on the election.
I want to try to win you over as a liberal for Donald Trump. So you're going to give me a chance, okay?
I will, sir.
All right, okay. There are 3 things I want you to think about when voting for Trump. Number 1, home ownership. I imagine you want to own a home sometime in your life, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, in order to own a home, you would have to make $125,000
Can you hear that, Lindsay, through your headphones?
Yeah, I'm
a year
hearing
right
it.
now,
Yep.
just to be able to get the mortgage. When Trump was president, it was $75,000 a year. Because Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have spent $6 to $7 trillion of unnecessary federal spending, which have inflated asset prices. The border. Under Donald Trump, the southern border was the most secure it was in American history, with border crossings at an all-time low. Under Kamala Harris, 10 million people have come across the southern border into this country. We have no idea who they are. They're coming into our communities. As a liberal, I imagine you don't like war, right? Under Donald Trump, it was the first president in 40 years where we had no new wars. Think about who is endorsing Kamala Harris. Dick Cheney, Leon Panetta, Liz Cheney. These are the warmongers of 20 years ago that got us into these wars. And this is why we're seeing Bobby Kennedy, Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, people that are card-carrying Democrats, vote for Trump, because what's happening at the Democrat Party is it's a party of censorship, it's a party of war, a party of open borders that is against actual traditional liberal values.
I agree.
So which way are you leaning?
Can I get a hat?
That's a good answer.
Listen to those cheers.
Thanks, man. God bless. Thank you.
I mean, that's incredible. And, Charlie Kirk's a Christian. He was crying at the end of the election because of how hard he had worked. I mean, he was literally crushing it. His TikTok account, which I just found out from a friend who sent me the PBD podcast, that he was getting like 40 million hits like a week or something ridiculous. I mean, it was insane. I mean, he dominated the TikTok scene. And, again, this is because both of these guys got strategic. They were able to look at the situation and say, well, ultimately, if the left wins, my values, whatever those are politically, are going to be completely and totally censored and suppressed, and I don't want that to happen. So I need to start making some inroads into communities that I wouldn't normally make inroads into, like TikTok. A lot of conservatives said, I'm not going to use TikTok. I would be one of those people probably, and because I don't want to support the communist regime and things like that in China. But Charlie did it, and as a result, he was hitting young people's TikTok accounts in incredibly insane numbers. In fact, I didn't realize how much of an influence Charlie Kirk was, but on the PBD podcast, they said he's easily on his way up there to be like a conservative Joe Rogan, which is pretty nuts. But when you watch these videos of these young people cheering at the college campuses, I mean, this is just crazy. That is wild. I mean, I don't even remember when people actually got that excited about any sort of political event. I mean, I was in college when Obama was running, and there was some energy and stuff, but I mean, not like this outside of, a campus, just people cheering and yelling. So when it comes to the efforts that these two guys did, the interesting thing is that they both made a huge impact for the Trump campaign. And the question becomes, though, is, all right, when the chips are down and Trump's got to negotiate some sort of thing. The GOP is now currently, more pro-choice and more pro-gay marriage than they are traditional marriage. And there was a clip actually from Vivek Ramaswamy where he essentially says just that. This is going to be a challenge moving forward, I think, because why should, the government protect somebody's religious freedom on gay marriage specifically if it's going to risk, game changers like Scott Presler going and trying to use his initiatives to do something else for a political candidate that's going to be more likely to represent him, especially considering the fact that the GOP is basically moving more left on those issues. And so the problem becomes that if Christians, especially considering there's way more Christians than there are LGBT voters, do not become politically mobilized, then they will lose a seat at the table. That's what I think is the big concern. And when we actually start looking at the Gallup polls, we're going to start to see that another demographic that is really important, which is women who are moving more towards the left. And so you have this attack on marriage and family, and the vector that it's coming through is this promise of religious liberty, so long as you leave your religious convictions on gay marriage and abortion to the side. And that's the concern. Now, we don't know if that's going to actually happen or not. We got to see where the chips fall, because right now Trump's still picking cabinet members. But I think that this coalition, the real question that we have for it is how fragile is this coalition? Are they going to actually be able to continue to set aside differences and stuff in order for Christians to have the religious liberty that they want? Because right now Trump is saying a lot of stuff about Jesus and all that kind of stuff, but he's a pragmatist ultimately, and he's going to do the best business deal, I think, in the end. And if Christians don't have that support, then they're going to lose it. But moving on to the female side of things, there was a poll that came out that showed that women are increasingly liberal. And there's even some other charts that show that this is way steeper. But women 18 to 29 essentially have very liberal views. Like, they are increasing relative to the men who are, in this highlighted line here on Gallup, starting to trend down. And when you actually look at what they cite as these reasons for why men and women are kind of splitting up, you can see this chart here on the screen, which I was just showing you a second ago. But basically, you've got your men who are starting to drop, which is not surprising as Charlie Kirk is making an influence there. But also the war on men was pretty hard against men on Twitter and all those different outlets. But when we actually look at what's happening with women, it's pretty concerning. And this seems to also be a trend that's happening regardless of religious background, as we've discovered in talking to Christian women in our own lives who tend to have more of these politically liberal views. After showing no change between Bush and Obama eras, the average percentage of young women saying human activity is responsible for global warming jumped 20 points to 86% in the Trump-Biden period. Similarly, since the Obama era, young women have become 19 points more likely to choose protection of the environment over economic growth when asked which goal should be prioritized. 78% now hold this view, up from 59% in 2008 to 2016. When asked about the government's role in protecting the environment, young women have become 18 points more likely to believe the U.S. is doing too little in this regard, rising from 62% to 80%. Now, let's just pause for a second and think about this. Why would that be the case? Why would women actually prioritize the environment over economics? And it's because they're not having babies. If you look at the rest of this data, I'm going to see if I can find this other chart that was pretty interesting. It might be in the other one. Let me just see if I've got it here. I don't think I do. Let me double check. No. There's another chart on Gallup that shows that women that are turning 30, between 30 and 39, they actually start to dip towards conservatives. And then when they get into their 40s and 50s, they go back towards liberal. And I think that we can all speculate that that is most likely because the kids are out of the house at that point. But in your 30s, your kids are starting to be like 8 years old, and they're starting to go through middle school, and you start to be a little more conservative. You start to be a little more concerned about your bank account. And so let's see here. Is that the one? Oh, that's the one I was just on. Okay. So coming back to this chart, young women have become 18 points more likely to support broad abortion rights, saying abortion should be legal under any or most circumstances rather than in only a few or no circumstances. Their preference for this position rose from 42% to 60% between 2008 to 2016 and 2017 to 2024. They have become 16 points more likely to say gun laws should be stricter, rising from 58% to 74%. Again, I think that this is ultimately the result of a shift towards not having kids. And I don't, I know the polls and all that kind of stuff. They can say, well, we asked them this and we asked them that, but people rarely like to acknowledge the reason why they actually want bad ideas, because they think the idea is good. And if you say, well, the reason why you want that is because you just don't have any kids, they'll say, well, I'm more than just a birthing machine. And that's true. But the reality is that if we don't have kids, then we don't have a country, we don't have a church, we run into a lot of problems. And so to wrap things up, you have this really interesting coalition happening where you've got this LGBT movement that has come into the conservative movement that is threatening to push conservative Christians out and lose representation for their pro-life and pro-marriage views. And then you also have this liberalism of women flocking to the Democratic Party, which after the votes were tallied, a lot of married women actually went to the conservative vote. And so the thing that I want to kind of zero in on is that I really think, and this might come out of left field for some people who are listening and have made it this far, that the women are actually the key to restoring the country. If women decide to acknowledge that God did make them primarily to foster families, either spiritual or biological, then the nation and the church will grow. And not without sacrifice, not without suffering. It's not like, hey, everybody start having babies. You're just going to suddenly gloss over the fact that some women die in childbirth, or some people can't have kids, or any of these difficulties, or the fact that kids are expensive and so you don't get to go on your vacations over to Europe and all this kind of stuff. So if you end up, wanting more kids, you're going to have to sacrifice. But that's really where, one of the most patriotic things that you can do is to actually have kids and to actually start families and to actually be pro-marriage and pro-life. And if you do that, then I think that over the long game, I think that the conservative Christian movement actually gains more political negotiations at the table, not because they want political power, but because they want to protect life and they want to be able to further what God intends for all people, whether they're gay, straight, or whatever. So this brings us to the close, which is the last thing I want to ask you guys about, which is, what do you think of these new Christian movies that are coming out this year, actually? So you've got Martin Scorsese is going to team up with Fox Nation for the faith-based anthology series, The Saints, which looks really cool. I'd play the trailer for you, but I'm small and I don't have the copyright, so I don't want to get dinged. But basically, he's going to cover some really cool saints, and it's going to start on December 8th. This is, first of all, this is great. If you start reading The Saints, you're going to be like, man, how in the world have they not been making movies about these people all the time? The Catholic saints, Protestants, go read the Catholic saints. I'm telling you, I know that Protestants have done a lot for evangelizing the world. That is 100% true. But the saints are just next level. It's kind of like Protestant and Tolkien, or C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. Narnia is great, but the big kid story is Tolkien. So, take that little jab in good fun. So anyway, the one I'm very excited about is Colby. But Martin Scorsese also said he was going to do like a Life of Jesus film, and people were saying that he's going to make Jesus a woman. I don't know if that's actually true. I think it got debunked, but it's Martin Scorsese, so, you know, Hollywood director. I just feel like there's going to be some stuff that's going to continue to move those people, those women, over to the further to the left. Maybe. Let me know in the comments. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say that I did see a bunch of people commenting that he had made already some movie about Jesus's life that was super bad. So,
Yeah.
do you know which one I'm talking about? It was called like
No,
The
I
Life
haven't
of-
seen it.
Oh,
What is it
man.
called?
I'll look it up.
Okay.
Look it up while you keep talking.
I've got 30 seconds left.
Oh,
The
no.
last one,
Yeah.
the last one is Mary, which is going to be on Netflix. And all I got to say is that there must have been some people at Netflix that knew that Christians were going to want Trump to win, because I feel like they had to have been doing this for a while. But this one is also one that I'm questioning, because, you know, I feel like if there was an opportunity, like, again, look at the polls, you know, I mean, look at these polls, right? I mean, you go into these articles and you look at women going liberal, you know, the probability that this Mary movie is actually a conservative, Orthodox view, specifically Catholic view of Mary, is pretty unlikely. I'm probably going to wait until my Protestant friends who have Netflix tell me whether or not it's good or bad. But you let me know. What do you think? Do you think that these movies are going to be true to the faith? Are they going to be like the Noah movie, where Noah is basically a climate, change problem guy? What do you think is going to happen? In the meantime, I will see you back here tomorrow night. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and let me know what you think about all this stuff in the comments. And don't forget to share so that we can get lots more traction and we can hit those followers and subscribers and make 100 episodes worth it. Thanks again. Keep thinking.